A round of applause for Lauren. I teach first grade, and so the idea that my students could be that articulate and brave in 10 years is just really heartwarming. So it's really cool. My name is Katie Herring, and I am a 2012 South Dakota Corps member. I teach first grade on the Rosebud Reservation, and it's an honor and a privilege to be here to speak tonight. I very distinctly remember my first morning in South Dakota. I woke up late, made my way down to the lobby of the Rosebud Casino for breakfast, grabbed myself a stale bowl of Rice Krispies, and proceeded to eavesdrop on everyone around me. People were talking about their majors, their hometowns, their alma maters, their long-distance relationships that were sure to make it despite the circumstances. We were young, we were naive. Kristen Rosa was wearing a dress. But more than anything else, we were earnest. Upon the completion of breakfast, we made our way out to the parking lot, where we got into a fleet of minivans to take us up to Mission for our first day of programming. I got in Kate Kelly's van. Upon everyone buckling their seatbelts, Kate turns around and very dramatically says, "The CD that you're about to hear was put together by the 2011s. We hope that you enjoy it." And turns back around. A hush falls upon the car, and we're on our way. Within the first 3 songs, the song Wide Open Spaces by the Dixie Chicks begins to play. Now, if this song was not your jam in the 3rd grade, unlike myself, this song is about a girl who grows up and moves to a place with wide open spaces, new faces, room for her to make a big mistake. And as the oldest of 4 daughters, I can feel this song in my gut as we make the 22-mile trek up to Mission. Tears start streaming down my face as I am wedged in the back left corner of this minivan, turning my shoulders very strategically to seem very interested in the grass, because that's all there was. But for me, in that moment, not only was I reflecting on the fact that I was growing up and I was moving away from home, but that this was real. That this wasn't summer camp or Freedom Riders or a college experience. This was real. And in August, I was going to have 25 first graders looking up at me and expecting me to know what's up. And I was terrified. We've all had that moment where you feel this big and you begin to consider if choosing this life was the right choice for you. You might have had that moment when you first landed in Pierre on a prop plane and looked around and realized that you were no longer in Kansas or New York City or Philadelphia. You might have had that moment as you sat in yet another chilly literacy session in the back of a cold library in Phoenix. You might have had that moment when a student pointed out to you that you were different than them, and that may or may not be okay. We have all had that moment, but the choices that we choose to make in those moments are what make us great. I've spent the last 2 years here being fairly nervous and unsure, kind of like I am right now that I'm gonna fall. But mostly afraid of the present, but also of the future. I think we've all spent a lot of time here nervous and scared and unsure. But what do we do with that? How does that shape us? Do we lean in and try harder, or do we pull back? Many of us have had to make that choice. Many of us have had to make that choice on a daily basis. There are some days when I walk into my classroom and my stomach is in knots, because there's content that my students might not understand and I don't know another way to teach it. Or there are circumstances that exist for them beyond the 4 walls of my classroom, and it's out of my control. And that's frustrating, and it's heart-wrenching. And so I go home, and I watch Netflix, and I go for runs, and I talk to my roommates, and I call my boyfriend, and I try to remember what it feels like to be 24, and to not feel like I have the weight of the whole world on my shoulders. But then other days, I get to go into my classroom, and I have 20 little faces looking up at me, expecting me to know the answer. And they sit, and they argue with me about the fact that even though Pluto is no longer a planet, that it does in fact still exist. And they sit there and they make text-to-text connections between a porcupine's right to carry a balloon and Rosa Parks in the civil rights movement. And the connections actually kind of make sense. I get to make food with their families at family nights and sit and hear stories about them and hear about what they're like beyond the 8 hours that they spend with me every day. And in those moments, I do remember why I get out of bed in the morning. because I get to go to work every day from the top of my head and to the bottom of my feet and know that what I'm doing matters. Because I could teach first grade for 40 years, which is scary to think about. But I can only have Isaiah for 1. And what I do with Isaiah in those 9 months matters. What you do with your students in 3rd grade or 9th grade or 11th grade matters. And that's special. Not every job gets to feel like that every day. There's this quote that anchors my classroom that says, "In order to write good stories, we must live good stories." In 2012, for the last 2 years, we've lived a good story. We picked this. We chose pain and sorrow, but also joy and grit, all rolled into one. And it wasn't always an easy choice, but we're better because of it. And most days, our students and our families and our communities make that choice very easy. In the past few weeks, I've had the opportunity to see you all reflect on your time here in South Dakota. I've gotten to watch you light up when you talk about your classrooms and your families and your communities, about the growth that your students have made, not just on paper, but in life. I've also gotten to watch your eyes flicker back and forth as you begin to consider what your time here is going to mean for you moving forward into the greater alumni movement. And to be honest, I think that's an answer that we're all still looking for, one that might not come anytime soon. But I also think that this is the kind of place that stays with you. And even when you leave it, it doesn't leave you. South Dakota for me will forever serve as a lens through which I see the rest of the world, whether I recognize it or not. There's a quote that deeply resonates with me in regards to my time here that says, "The year of letting go, of understanding loss, grace, of the word no. The year of humanity, humility, when the whole world couldn't get out of bed. The year I broke open and dug out all the rot with my own hands. The year I learned small talk and how to smile at strangers. The year of softness, sweetness. The year of being alone and learning how much I like it. The year I made peace and love right here." That is what my time here has meant for me. The year that I dug out the rot of preconceived expectations and bias and privilege. 2 years of making small talk and smiling at strangers. 2 years of being alone and learning how much I like it. 2 years of making peace and love right here. So I implore you to make peace and love wherever you might go next. To the classrooms of Dallas, of Phoenix, of Sioux Falls. To the field organizing in Minneapolis, and to the recruitment of Native Corps members. In the halls of academia, or in the vows of a marriage. In the communities that we've been so privileged to call home the last 2 years. Make peace and love right here. Because those are the only 2 things that are going to change the policies and systems that so strictly govern our world. And the only 2 things that make any of this worth fighting for. I love you all, and I couldn't have done this without you. To discomfort. Thank you.